Hello, my fellow awakening ones. So, just wanted to share my thoughts, my intuition, and my downloads about the truth around, or more of the truth around Yeshua ben Yosef's story, the being most people know as Jesus or Jesus Christ. So basically, there's a lot of untruth, a lot of fabrication, as well as a lot missing from Jesus's actual story, Yeshua's actual story, as well as for his wife and partner, Miriam Magdalene, most people know as Mary in English, and many of their followers as well. And so I just wanted to share regarding the time leading up to the crucifixion, the death, and then the resurrection. There are multiple versions of reality that played out there. So in one sense, the crucifixion did happen in one reality, but that is not the only reality or timeline that played out. So basically, and I've confirmed this with Yeshua in my mind, because I'm very psychic and I have clairaudient ability, and you can take it or leave it. But basically, he confirmed what I intuited about a year ago, maybe last summer, sometime around then. So in one version of events, he did get betrayed by Judas and then caught and arrested and then tortured and dragged through the street and and then crucified and then died, and then brought his body. But his body died, and then he came back and resurrected his body briefly a few days later to show the untruth of death as far as on a soul and spiritual level. But that also, the other reality that played out is that he got ahead of it, right? He was obviously very, very intelligent and very perceptive and very psychic himself. And to me, I was thinking about this a lot. I've been studying this subject within religion and esotericism and metaphysics. And it occurred to me, after hearing, and I've had my own seeds planted as far as another timeline from this one channel, these Brazilian girls, I forget their names, but on Lightworker 613 was the channel. But anyway, in another reality, he saw the writing on the wall, saw that the Pharisees and other forces and the Romans were threatened by him, obviously, and probably getting close to taking him out, as they do, as the powers that were, many still are, but the elites, whatever you want to call them, the powers that were then, and have always taken anyone out that threatens the power structure and says anything of truth and empowerment for the people and teaching to be in forgiveness and to be sovereign and free in your being, and that you don't need a medium to God, and to see yourself as more than just a material being, but a spiritual being having a temporary material corporeal experience. But so he saw that he was about to get tortured and or assassinated. He probably had visions very clearly of scenarios that would play out, different versions of this, even And instead of just allowing himself to get tortured and murdered in front of all the people that loved him and looked up to him, right? Instead of putting himself and his loved ones through that, and everyone else, he escaped. He fled with Miriam and some of their followers as well, because it wasn't just him that was under threat. It was anybody close to him, right? And so they fled and they traveled. And and lived a long, happy life for several hundred years after that. Right, the bodies that we live in now are the same basically as 10,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago, when our ancestors lived for hundreds of years. As it says in the Bible, in the Hebrew Bible, in the first, I don't know what it is, 15 chapters, everybody lives hundreds of years, and then magically, inexplicably, I think starting with Abraham and Sarah, they only lived to 100 or around 100, 70 to 110, without explanation for that change, which is pretty significant. And everyone after that point only lives to that age range or less. But Jesus and Mary, Yeshua and Miriam and their followers escaped and fled and lived long, happy lives. And I feel he traveled all over the world, and they eventually settled in France, or at least in one reality, they settled in France in a little village. I don't know the name, but there's a church now that a very small church that is said to be the first church of early Christians, because that was where he settled. And in that scenario as well, I get that the Romans and the Pharisees just got somebody that looked like Yeshua once he had escaped, and once they couldn't find him, saw that he was gone, they just got another guy that looked like him, close enough, and they just tortured and crucified that guy and said, look, we got him. Look at, yep, your hero. And this rabble rouser is no more. We win, right? And that's not the first time that has happened either. I should have started with this, but it's important to note that we don't live in a fluid, fixed, linear, solid reality where there's just one version of events, whether on an individual, group, specific group, or collective level. We live in a multiverse, as more and more people are realizing now, and I feel that's always been true, but especially for events of the last 6,000 years, let's say, in particular, there's different timelines, different versions, different realities, different potentials that play out. And to me, theoretically, if you can think of a potential just in your own life, even if you don't consciously choose and select that and materialize that, it doesn't mean that it doesn't still play out, especially if you put a lot of thought and imagination and emotion behind it. And the same is true with Yeshua and Miriam. They, to me, very clearly, they didn't only have what we play out, what we were all taught, and what is written in the King James Bible. And on that note, that's not even, the original, the same as the original Bible when it was first laid down, Christian Bible, or the as accurate as the stories that the early Christians told that were closer to the events that when they actually happened. But Yeshua, I mean, if you just think of it logically, right? Forget about multiple realities. If you're a very perceptive person, such as Yeshua, you're very, and you're, you love, but you also, and you teach compassion, but you also believe in self-preservation and love and respect for yourself, which would mean that you would not choose to just allow yourself to be martyred and tortured. Like, what would that do, right? Like, that's not inspiring. That again, that just is putting yourself and then everyone who cares about you in tremendous pain, when, especially when, if he had any inkling, and he had to have known what was coming, right? It's not like he just, it's not like he was deluded about how the response to his teachings, as far as the powers, the people in power were concerned. And I know, just on a human level, I wouldn't do that if I were him, and I think most people wouldn't do that if they could see, at some point, oh, it's looking like they're gonna try and kill me. I better get out of here, and the people around him. I mean, I assure you also, it was not only him that was crucified. I'm sure other people were killed, or at minimum imprisoned, which it doesn't mention, just for following him, right, and being associated with him, which it doesn't mention at all as well. Like, if this happened today, right, like, we're not that different. It's not like the one guy would be taken out necessarily. Just like in the civil rights movement, it wasn't only Martin Luther King Jr. that was killed necessarily, or imprisoned. Tons of people, many people were killed, and many, many more were imprisoned and abused. And same thing 2,000 years ago. And yeah, and then on another level, I know, because I was there, and I'm not the only, on a soul level, I mean, not as this person, but as someone else, and I know other people on a soul level in my life that were there also, some of them very close to me in this life again. And a lot of us were abused. I know in this life, I've been playing out karma all the way from that life in particular, in an energetic form, through my own self-work and meeting with healers, certain healers. I learned that I had my ankles broken as I was a guardian type person, like a bodyguard for him. There's no mention of me and or this person that my soul was, of course, in the Bible or anywhere written, as were, most of the people that followed or worked with him are not mentioned, or at least not in any texts that are publicly available. I don't know, it could be in some hidden, like underneath the Vatican or some other hidden library of information like that in our records from those times. But I was somebody who was there. I was one of the 144,000. Not to say I'm better than anyone. In a lot of ways, I wish that I wasn't, because I paid very, very dearly, not just in that life, but in other lives as well, just for having been in that situation associated with Yeshua. Yeah, I had my ankles broken, and I played that out in certain root chakra distortions in this life as well, and then just energetically what that does. Sometimes when you have an injury in another life, there's a lot of dense emotion around it, and it's not just like an accident where somebody does it to you. It lingers and echoes through other lives. A perfect example is if somebody is burned at the stake or hung, let's say for heresy, quote unquote, or practicing witchcraft, or worshiping the earth instead of the church or Allah or whatever. You could play that out in this life as sleep paralysis, or I don't know, narcolepsy maybe, something like that, where you have trouble like staying centered in your body in and out of the sleep state, or sort of staying awake while you're active during the day. Any sort of physiological issue, any sort of mental, emotional, physical condition always has an energetic and spiritual counterpart, a spiritual, metaphysical, fundamental reason, karmic reason. Yeah, and so anyways, those are my thoughts. That's my take, that's my read, that's my download and insight about what really happened with Yeshua and Miriam, or at least in another timeline, in another reality, possibly even several variations within that as well. So hope you enjoyed that.